Hey guys, so today we're going to make my famous sloppy joes, and whenever I say I'm going to make sloppy joes for people, they're always like, ew, gross sloppy joes, or they think of those really gross sloppy joes you used to get from like the cafeteria in high school or something. They're not like that. They're really good. They have a lot of flavor, and they're the easiest thing that you're ever going to make. So if you ever need to make a pot of food for a bunch of people really quick, that's an easy thing to do. Or if you want to make a smaller version of it for yourself, it makes really good leftovers. So you only need, I think, a total of 5 ingredients. So the first thing that you're going to need is an onion. This one's, I want to say between a small and medium onion. And I just got a sweet yellow onion from the grocery store. The second thing you're going to need is a small can of Campbell's tomato soup. The third thing you're going to need is a bottle of Heinz chili sauce. Looks just like this. And you can usually find this in the condiment aisle next to like ketchup and hot sauce. Of course, you're going to need hamburger buns, so any old hamburger buns will do. And then the last thing you need is some ground beef. So I have 80% ground lean beef. I usually prefer to use something like 80% lean or ground chuck, preferably over something like ground sirloin. Something that has a little bit higher fat content is going to brown easier, and it's going to have a lot more flavor than if you use something like ground sirloin because it doesn't have a lot of fat. And if you do choose to use that, that's totally fine. I would add maybe a little bit of oil to the bottom of the pan so that you don't burn the meat. So let's get started. I hope you enjoy the recipe. It's really simple. It's something that actually my grandma taught me, so this is her recipe, so shout out to my grandma. Nani, hey. So let's get started. I hope I can make this video less than 10 minutes because I always get started talking and then it takes longer. So the first thing that I'm going to do is cut my onion into sort of little dices. And I don't know if I said this in the beginning, but I have a pound of ground beef, so you can easily make this recipe larger, but for 2 people, I think that a pound is more than sufficient. So this is what the ground beef looks like. I don't normally go to the butcher, but at the grocery store, they didn't actually have any prepackaged beef packages anymore from the Thanksgiving holiday. Basically, everything was sold out, so I had to have my boyfriend go and grab some at the meat department. So I've just put the beef into a non-stick skillet, and I'm going to start browning that. I would actually, in general, probably prefer to make this with 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds, but my boyfriend just got a pound of beef, so that's what I have to work with. That's all I have to cook with right now. So because I'm using a non-stick skillet, I'm going to use a plastic spoon or spatula. You don't want to use anything that's going to scratch the Teflon on the bottom of your pan. So I'm going to work the meat a little bit, trying to break it up into some smaller pieces. You can see that I've broken that up into little pieces now. And what I'm going to do is add the onion and start cooking, probably on medium to medium-high heat, just to start browning and cooking the beef. So I'm going to take the onion and add that now. So I just sprinkled the onion over the top, you can see. I'm probably going to only add about 3/4 of that medium to small onion that I use, only because I only have 1 pound of meat and I don't need to overwhelm the dish with onion. So I'm going to reserve the rest and use it in another recipe. I can hear that my meat's starting to get a little bit of a sizzle going on, so that's good. So you can probably hear the pan sizzling now. Things are starting to happen. I'm actually wearing one of the Gap shirts that I talked about in one of my haul videos that I made about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm really enjoying this, and I'm also wearing the skinny dark jeans that I bought and the tall sort of Steve Madden boots that I bought in black. So those, I think, are between 2 haul videos that I made, so if you're interested in checking that out. So I'm just moving the meat around in the pan, and I can show you. So that's what it's doing. You can see that it's heating. Alright, so the meat's still cooking, and I put a little apron on. I know it looks kind of silly, but when I'm cooking any kind of meat products like ground beef or bacon or making stir fry, I always try to put something over the shirt that I'm wearing, or I actually even change my shirt because you get a lot of sort of grease splattering, and I don't want to ruin my new clothes. So I know it looks kind of silly, but that's kind of what I have to do. So the meat's been cooking for probably about 4 minutes now, and you can see that there's actually quite a bit of liquid in the bottom of the pan, and because I'm using about half the amount of meat that I normally would, I'm going to use about half the can of soup and half the can of chili sauce. Alright, so the meat's been cooking for probably about 5 minutes now. It's almost cooked all the way through. The onions are becoming translucent, and they're pretty much almost all the way cooked through. What I'm going to do is skim off the extra fat now. So usually what I do is I just take a measuring cup or something and I stick it on the side, and then I just ladle off the extra fat that way. So I'm tipping the pan away from me so that any grease particles aren't going to fly towards me. I'm taking my spoon and I'm carefully putting the grease in there. Now this is really hot, so you're not going to want to touch the container. It'll heat the metal up very quickly. You don't want to put it in a paper cup or something plastic that's going to melt, so I'm using a metal sort of measuring cup here. Alright, so I think the meat is pretty much all the way cooked through. So what I'm going to do is going to add about a half of this container of tomato soup. And then I'm going to take probably about half the container of the chili sauce. And I usually, if I have to make a decision about what to add more of, I'll usually add a little bit more of the chili sauce than of the tomato soup, because I feel like it has just a little bit more flavor. So what I'm going to do is just mix these all together. And this is really not an exact recipe, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect measurements. Basically what you're wanting to do is create a nice sauce that's going to have some good flavor. And you can always add more or add less depending upon how sort of much sauce or how sloppy you want your sloppy joes to be. So I think I want a little bit more sauce, so I'm going to add a little bit more of each. And you just want to basically mix it all up so that it all looks like one consistent kind of glop of mixture. It tastes really good. It might not look so good. It might not sound very good, but sloppy joes is kind of one of those American classic kind of dishes. And this is quite possibly one of the easiest things that you could ever make. So this is basically what the pan looks like right now. We got a little bit of bubble. I'm letting it heat through and just cook maybe the last bit of meat that might not have been cooked all the way through. I'm letting the sauce that I've added heat up and sort of work together to become a little bit thicker. Alright, so once you've had it maybe bubbling and stirring it for maybe about a minute, pretty much you're done. So you want to turn off the heat, and then basically your sloppy joe mix is done. What I would do is take a plate, take one of your buns, and then I'm going to take a scoop of my lovely mixture and then ladle that on there. So this is basically the meal that I would serve, a sloppy joe sandwich with a nice healthy salad. I put some cucumbers on there, a little red pepper, a little bit of cheese, and that's a sufficient meal. So I hope you enjoy it. It's the simplest recipe that I could come up with. And everyone that I know that's eaten it loves it. Most people kind of look at it and they scoff and they think, oh, that doesn't look like it's going to be very tasty, or every sloppy joe I've ever had before was disgusting, or the canned ones are gross. But everyone always ends up really liking it. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you can have an opportunity to try it. Again, have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.